Today, we're going to be talking about when your ex's new life looks so much better. I hear from so many of you this deep question that you have, that you see your ex's new life, they're posting it on Instagram, maybe they're posting it on Facebook, and then you end up wondering, are they doing better now that they're not with me? And they have made you think all along that the issue has been you. And now that they're out and their life looks so perfect, at least picture perfect from the photos that you're seeing, you end up wondering, maybe it was you. Maybe you were the problem all along because that's what you've been afraid of. That's what they've been telling you. And so you don't know what sense to make of this when you see these amazing images. I know that when I got out of my toxic relationship, and for those who know my story, if you read Love You More, you know that I was dealing with a son who was battling acute leukemia and with possibly a death sentence. I was just beside myself in distress when my ex walked out. Now, honestly, him walking out wasn't the worst thing that could have happened, but the timing of it couldn't have been crappier. And despite the fact that we got a super fast divorce, I got very lucky in that way. He was already posting engagement pictures of him and his girlfriend. So here we are, my life feels trashed, and I'm sure your life has too. You feel like your life has been demolished, that they have taken so much from you. You feel you're just trying to basically pick up the pieces. Maybe you're battling for the house. Maybe you're struggling to connect with your kids. Maybe the finances is an absolute disaster, and already it looks like your ex is on to the new life, and that things couldn't have looked better for this person. And you're wondering, what's wrong? Maybe it was me all along. So let's get into this today. I'm really excited to talk about why toxic individuals, particularly narcissistic individuals, move on so fast, so rapidly, why it looks like their life is so picture perfect when you feel like you're just sitting among all the broken pieces. Let's talk about the things that we get wrong, but also why they do this, and the things that we get wrong about the reasons they do it, and how to pick up your life if your life is feeling absolutely shattered. I'm so thrilled that you're here with me today. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a retired psychologist, and I'm also a narcissistic abuse survivor. So I'm just really, really happy that we can spend the next hour together. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to make sure to take at least 15 minutes to take your questions and address any kind of issues that you're having. So I have a feeling this is a common problem for a lot of us, that we get into these toxic relationships and we get out, and the partner we've been with, who said that they had never met anyone like us, that they had never felt this love before, is already with somebody else, curating a beautiful picture with this new person, and you end up thinking, oh my goodness, what happened? And really, am I that replaceable? Did they not ever really love me? Maybe I really was the problem. Maybe I really wasn't enough. Maybe it was me. I know that those are some things that crossed my mind when this happened to me. So here's some reasons why toxic people's new life looks so incredibly rosy, so perfect. Remember the fact that they're very image conscious. They're always about crafting how they look to other people. They're very egocentric and ego sensitive. So what's happening is that they're creating a highlight reel. Think of it like a highlight reel, that they want to create this illusion of success and happiness and fulfillment. I remember my ex telling me that he really believed that he had an addiction to fantasy. I think that was actually one of the really few rare truthful things that he said to me, is that these individuals have a need to believe that life could be perfect, rosy. And every person they meet, they end up thinking this person's going to solve all the things that are wrong in their life, that you are the ideal person, and this is going to be the ideal relationship, the ideal love, and all the loss and the emptiness and the boredom and everything that they struggle with is going to be corrected in this relationship. And because of that they've created this sort of this fantasy, this idealized fantasy, then it's all based on a mirage. None of it's real. It then becomes very performative, extremely performative. And they need to have those who've been watching, who knows they've been changing jobs, knows that they've failed out of this job, this thing, and then that thing, knows that they've left kids behind that they're not seeing, knows that they have a string of cheating. They need to have the public believe that somehow things have changed, that they've turned some corner. But they're performing for you too, because this is one of the things that you're very aware of. You feel the performance. You feel the fact that this feels like too good to be true. And it is, because part of it is they have a need for you also to believe that they're doing better, that they're not the same person that they were with you, that this is sort of like a complete fresh page, a complete restart. So there's very much this effort to create this crafted look. And that's what you're seeing. It's definitely a performative, or it's a public performance on social media. So they have this incredible need to be seen as desirable, as admirable, as above and beyond. They have that incredible need, but they also want to do this from a punitive standpoint. They need to know that they're, think about this. When you leave a job and somebody comes in and steps in and takes your job, say you know that person, say that you know that individual and that they have a really good track record. Let's be honest for a moment. Don't you for a second wonder if this person's going to do better than you did? And that doesn't it cross your mind that what will that mean if they take this position, take your department, or take your whatever it is that you do, and then take it to the next level? It's scary. It makes you feel really insecure. So you're a secure person, you're normally not an insecure person, and those are just normal fears that crosses the minds of most of us. So take somebody who's extremely shaky with a fragile ego, maybe riddled with insecurity, and they leave you or you leave them. They have this fear. What if you go on and do better? What if they were the one holding you back? Now, okay, so they don't spend a lot of time on this, but on the other hand, any way in which you do better feels like a direct threat, like a direct competition to them, and that shows them up. So it may not be based on insecurity, it just may be based on competitiveness. They don't want you showing them up. So they have this need to make their next life look better, look perfect, so that they can say, see, I'm great. It wasn't me. It was never about me. It's about my partner. My ex is the crazy, they even say that. My ex was the crazy one. My ex was the one that had all the problems. My ex couldn't handle money. My ex ran us into the ground. They had a big need for this to be the story. So that's point number one, is that they're very much about image crafting or creating the highlight reel. And thank you so much for you guys being here. I really appreciate you sharing this live and liking it. That means a lot to me. And thank you so much for being here. For those who may not know, I always do this every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. So the second thing that's happening, and I kind of just highlighted it a second ago, but I want to go back and revisit it, is that toxic individuals don't live in a world of reality. They are always about avoidance of responsibility and accountability. Why? Well, because they're running on their impulses. So they move from thing to thing to thing to thing because they have this deep need to find novelty and excitement. Well, we know what happens. And when you are running on your impulses and on your feelings, do you make the best decisions? Well, absolutely not. I mean, you're going to indulge too much. You're going to be doing things that you shouldn't be doing. You're going to be doing risky behaviors. And as a result, it makes your life a big mess. Well, they don't want to really look at that part. So as a result of that, they're running from the fact that they've created this massive mess. And so they really want to have this idea that things could be perfect, could be better. They have this idea that they can have a restart and it be perfectly wonderful with someone new, as if the answer is found. Notice, they always look as if the answer is found outside of them, never inside of them. It's never that something they're doing wrong. It's just that they don't have that right job, or they're not driving the right car, or they don't know the right person or people, and they don't have the right partner by their side, or if they don't have the right kind of lifestyle. So they're always looking for these ways in which they could, it's very idealistic, ways that they sort of fix what's wrong without realizing that what's wrong is inside of them. And that's the form of idealization. As I mentioned, it's a form of being attracted to fantasy. It's as if they're living in a movie, and it's just perfect. It's movie scripted. And so they have this perspective that somebody come in and that you're not human, that you don't put your pants on one leg at a time, that you don't sneeze and you don't get colds, and there's no arguments. And I remember hearing from my ex all the time where he wished we could get back to the beginning part of a relationship. Well, that's when we didn't know each other. And that's before we started encountering like normal life situations that everybody encounters. So what he really was saying, I want this perfection, this like living on a vacation. I don't want to deal with the real life, coming home to real life. So when they get into that new relationship with a new partner, it's the same thing that's happening. They're doing the same thing they did with you, they're doing with a new person. They're love bombing them. They're showing the all affection. There's this idealization. This is going to somehow be a better relationship than before. And to you as the outsider, it ends up making you feel like you're nothing, and that what you had was not meaningful. Because the other painful truth about toxic relationships is these individuals are incredibly good at the beginning phase of a relationship, very good at making first impressions, but they don't know how to create intimacy. They don't know how to do commitment, to make sacrifices for the sake of the other people. They don't do it for their children. They don't do it for their job unless there's some payoff for it. And they certainly don't do it for their partner. So as a result of that, they are, once again, all about this first stage, this rush of the first stage, which looks really beautiful, but they're not going to be able to do the next part of the stage any more than they were able to do your second part of the relationship, which is doing ordinary life, making a commitment, running a family, like planning a future together. Those are things that they really, really struggle to do. So that's the second reason. It's the idealization phase that's being repeated all over again. The third thing that's happening is that they count on that new person being unaware of their past problems. Have you noticed how they rewrite history? They are amazing. I mean, you can live through the exact set of circumstances and then hear them retell it a year or two, and you end up thinking, I don't recognize the thing that they're saying. I've heard people like they'll retell what was said or how we met or what happened. They literally repaint themselves as if they're better, they're more attentive, they're more emotionally available, as if this was just something that went wrong with. It's not them. They'll paint it to where anything that they did as a misdeed is if it's been whitewashed out of the picture. So as a result of this, they are repainting you too. And they've done it since they've met you. When they met you, they picked up on your flaws and a few things about you. It's almost like, again, let's use the idea of the caricature. If you've ever sat down with somebody who draws people's pictures, they're going to find some feature of you. Maybe it's the way your ears are positioned on the side of your head, or maybe you have an unusual looking nose, or maybe you're somebody, for me, they always emphasize my cheeks. What does the person who's a caricature does when they make a cartoon photo of you? Well, they blow that piece up. Maybe you have a real broad forehead, or they're going to emphasize that broad forehead. So what your toxic partner did when they first met you is they picked up on what your insecurity was. Maybe it is you're a person who's very kind of careful about details, or maybe you're somebody who's really likes to go bold and big, or whatever this is that they've picked that up about you and they've now made an exaggerated version of it. You know how I told you that he can never let anything go. He just needs to argue about it until the nth degree, they'll say about you. Or, they'll say, how she's super sensitive and anything emotional, she just shuts down. It may be a small kernel of truth, but they have blown it into this big thing, making it out to be the explanation for your problem. And that's how the smear campaign gets started. It got started when they met you. But that new person in that new life, they're hearing that version of you, whatever it is. I remember my ex said to me, and I was wise enough as a psychologist to kind of pick up this wasn't very savvy of him to do this. Maybe, that's partly due to my job. I'm always listening to how do people explain mistakes. He said his first partner, he didn't really love. They were just trying to get out of the house. Okay, I can see that. You're young. You came from another culture where people don't leave until they get married. And it makes sense that you went out of a toxic home. Yeah, so I didn't necessarily didn't buy that one. The second one, he said that she was just kind of crazy and described her as sort of having an addiction problem. The third one, he said she put her friendships over him, and it was a very brief relationship, and he didn't have a lot to say about her. And then the third one, he said that she'd been in the country as an immigrant in a wrong way. She'd gotten in the wrong way, and he felt lied to about that because he had a green card, and he just felt like that there was pieces of her history that she was keeping back, and he didn't respect that. Now, notice about all those examples he gave. Did you hear a single one that talked about him and his role? Like, maybe the first one is that he didn't take responsibility for the fact that he wanted to leave home, and maybe it wasn't socially acceptable that he left home that way, but it didn't mean he couldn't. Nobody like locked him to his house. Nobody said at 18, 20 or whatever age he was that he couldn't leave the house. He took the easy way out. He didn't own his tendency to want to take the easy way out. Let's take the second wife, which is the one he was married to the longest. Okay, so she had some problems. How much work did he do in that relationship? Did he stop cheating? I actually interviewed her and heard that he was very rampant a cheater in that relationship. And I also heard that he was abusive in that relationship, physically as well as emotionally. What about the third marriage? Interestingly enough, on that one, when I finally got a hold of that ex-wife, she told me that she discovered he was rampantly cheating and that she kicked him out really rapidly in the relationship, which is why he had very little to say about her. And the third one, he still was in touch with her and they still had an ongoing relationship. So as much as he had a few things to say about her, apparently her level of dishonesty didn't bother him enough to stop having a relationship with her. So notice what happens in these relationships, that they place the blame outside of themselves and they don't take the blame personally. They don't take accountability. So you're going to see the same thing. This new partner is hearing their rewritten history. They don't know this person has basically shifted the history in their favor to benefit them. So they don't know that they're walking into a trap, just like you walked into the same trap. So the reason number 4 is they need an ego boost. Are we surprised by this one? Again, I really want to hesitate here because a lot of us like to think that narcissists are extremely insecure. I differ with that. I don't agree that narcissists are extremely insecure. I think that narcissists actually are grandiose in the sense that they think they're superior than you. They think they're better than you. But one of the ways in which when a person is better, they want all the attention. I should be acknowledged that I'm an amazing person, and I want you to sort of like flood me with all this adoration and this admiration. I want all of the attention towards me. And what better way to get that get into a new relationship with somebody who still sees you with rosy colored glasses, who then thinks that you're all that, because they don't know that you don't follow through on things. They don't know that you're a liar. They don't know that you're not faithful. They don't know, all these things about you. So at first, they're just like overwhelmed and so touched by the love bombing. So this new person, this new relationship is giving them an amazing boost to their ego. And here's something I've already mentioned before, is they want to punish you. They have gotten off for a long time with putting you down, making you struggle, making you feel not in control of your life. They want to make sure that you don't get to leave well. They're not about you. They don't believe in win-wins. This is not a situation where you go home with your toys and I pick up and go home with my toys. No, they have a need to make sure that you feel decimated, because it's their way of sort of saying, see, I am better. Look, this person's not doing any better. I obviously was the one that brought all the stability, and I was the good person in this relationship. So there's this deep need of making sure that they look better, and they do take delight in your discomfort. I mean, I've talked about this, I think last week or the week before I got into sadism, and it was a terribly uncomfortable topic, but some people actually get pleasure by your pain. Some people really enjoy seeing you struggle. Also, here's one of the other things that they do, is that because of their sense of self, as some of you recently watched a video where I talked about the fact that they're all about public image and do they have a sense of self? And a lot of you rightly said, and I really appreciated your comments, there was a lot of comments that came in, was that they don't really have a strong sense of self. They're chameleon-like. They literally pick up and adopt what you're like, even though that's really not actually, it's not really authentic to themselves. But because this lack of stable sense of self, They take on their new partner's values, personality traits, and interests, and it makes them look like, if you think about it, because you suddenly see them doing things that they wouldn't do with you, it makes them look like they've been transformed into a new person. But what you're really seeing is not a new person. You're just seeing them adopt and align with a new partner that is different from you. I'll give you an example. My ex claimed with me he hated country music and he really didn't like pets. But one of his partners that he cheated on had 5 dogs, one of which slept, a couple of them slept with her. Now, why would he do that? And why? And I bet you if I was to interview her, she would tell me that he really loved animals and he was really into country music, when I know that that's nothing he listened to and we never had a pet and he was very clear about that. So what happened here? Well, he was mirroring her, and that's why he took it on. And I bet you if I saw him with every single partner, I would see a new version of this person. And that's what you're seeing too. So partly what you're seeing is the stability this new person is bringing to their life. Remember, this is it's an unstable person who needs another relationship to prop them up psychologically. So they get into this new relationship extremely rapid, and as a result of that, then they adopt this new person's lifestyle, and that then stabilizes them. And they look better because they're stabilized by the new person. But who they are at a core, nothing has changed. There's been no work at any levels. It's just that they are adopting that new individual, and that's what you're seeing, and that makes them look better because that new person, hopefully, if they've picked decently, is doing well enough. In fact, if you remember the research from Sandra L. Brown, it looked at this Purdue study out of 2014 of 600 couples. 2/3 of the individuals picked by toxic partners were individuals who were high functioning. They had no childhood trauma, no history of trauma in any way, and so they were doing really, really well. Now the relationship destroyed them and they were pretty dysfunctional by the end of it. But toxic people, particularly narcissistic people, are attracted to good functioning, high functioning individuals, which makes them look high functioning when they get into that new relationship, until all the trauma bonding and all of the negative stuff starts up and they start to wear away, whittle away at that person's ability to function. So just hold on to that. This person is being mirrored and you're seeing that individual, not your partner. And you know, the hard part is that as much as all of this feels like your ex left and they're doing better, they're not doing better, they're just being distracted. They are a person that whenever life gets tough, they get running. They don't deal with the toughness of life. They run away from the toughness of life. They've run away from the wreckage of your relationship, from all the confusion that they have created, all the shattered dreams and hopes and plans, all the goals that you guys have set up, all the financial ruin they may have put you guys into. They were running from that. And they are actually moving into the new relationship in a distracted way, restarting it up as if none of that behind them ever mattered or ever existed. So what you're seeing is distraction. So let me review the 7 points of why toxic people get out of a relationship and the new one looks so great. 1, it's about image. It's image management. It's the highlight reel you're seeing. Number 2, it's the idealization phase that's repeating itself. Number 3, they found somebody who has no idea what they're getting into with this person. They don't know this person's past. Number 4, they really need an audience, which gives them this massive ego boost. Number 5, they do want to hurt you. So they like the fact that this just is a way to flaunt and gloat with this new relationship. 6, they're mirroring their new partner who probably is a more stable personality than they are. And number 7, they get to be distracted from all the wreckage and the mess that they left behind. But here's the thing to hold on to. That new supply, whether or not they knew or didn't know about your relationship, and I hear you guys. Some of you say, but they knew they were married and they got into the relationship with anyway, or they knew that we were exclusive and they got into that relationship anyway. So I hate this new person. Okay, I admit it. That's a pretty low blow. And by the way, my story was the same. My ex and his new fiance, she knew of me. She knew I was around. But my ex is really a bad person. She's not getting a better version of him. Even if she then did something terrible to me and betrayed me as well, he still did it. And whether this is a man or a woman in your life, that individual still made the choice to cheat on you, to betray you, and pick up a new life. So I really find it hard to be angry at the new supply because they're the next victim. They're the next person in line who's going to get all the same kind of crap that you put up with in that toxic relationship. So as much as you may want to hate that individual, I think what it really shows to me is that you're still not over your ex because you're so angry at the new partner instead of being angry, putting the anger where it belongs. Your anger belongs on your ex who destroyed your life, who destroyed your sense of self, who ran you into the ground and left you with a wreckage of a life to pick up on your own. That new person didn't do that as much as they may have thought, even if they may have cheated on you, but they are not the one who destroyed your life. Your ex did. So notice if you have hard feelings about that new supply, the chances are, I even struggle with the word new supply because they're a person. I don't like the fact that we are objectifying another human being. This is another person with a name and a family who's somebody's father and brother and somebody's sister and daughter. And so I really struggle with it. And they're just the next victim in line of this long list of people that your toxic ex is being very hurtful and crushing lives. Okay, so let's move into the next section, which is what we get wrong about the ex's new life. Here's some myths that we believe, and I've often heard you guys tell me this when you talk to me about what's happening in your life. So see which one of these really resonates with you when you listen to this list. Some of you end up thinking they've changed. The new partner is better and they've just become a better person and they're showing more devotion than they ever showed me. And so you end up thinking that your partner could be better. They just didn't choose to be better with you. And listen, I know that really hurts. And as someone who had my partner in therapy for the whole 2 years that we were together, it is very hard to imagine that he may show up as a better version of himself for somebody else when we put in such hard work to have a better version for our relationship. The truth of the matter is these people are, again, I'm going to say it again, responsibility and accountability avoidant. There is not any better with them. They don't change. If they would have changed, if they were a good person and they had this big revelation about the pain they were causing you in that relationship, they would have stopped and did something about it. The fact that they didn't, the fact that they were willing to destroy your family over this, to me shows that there is nothing new about this individual. They're just rinsing and repeating. So remember that. They're just rinsing and repeating. So please don't get into this idea that the version you're seeing with them, with this new person, is somehow a better version and there's been this big transformation. There hasn't been. There hasn't been. Here's myth number 2. We end up thinking, well, they must really love this person and they just didn't love me. Narcissists have an inability to see other people as people. You're not a person. You're no more than a tool on their tool belt. You're no more, probably in fact, their iPhone's more significant to them or their mobile device than you were. You were nothing more than an asset, a device in their life that they utilized. They see everybody that way. It's not just unique to you. It's how they treat all relationships, as assets, because they don't see people, as human beings. People are just a commodity. You're a consumable. So what you're seeing with this on public display or in social media is just a strategic performance of somebody who's objectifying another person. It isn't a better version. It isn't a more like sensitive person. We really have this myth, and I know Hollywood perpetuates it. Hollywood loves this myth, is that the bad person, that's often the bad boy, and it can be also a woman, but usually it's the man. It's a bad boy who meets the right woman. And I mean, I'm thinking of, for example, the car series, where like there's 7 in a franchise and they run around and, the main guy who's like Vin Diesel, like he meets the right woman and she converts him. He becomes a new person for her. That doesn't happen. That's Hollywood. Please know that's not what happens in these relationships. They don't become a better person. So what you're seeing is just a performative act. So number 1, they've changed. Number 2, they must really love this person. Number 3, we often say to ourselves, they've moved on because I wasn't enough. You were enough. You were always enough. The lack of enoughness is something that resides in them, not resides in you. If you have hung around me enough, you've heard me talk about low receptive capacity, but I'm going to talk about it again. Imagine everybody has a cup or a bucket. In this bucket, we get supply, like people, like something bad's happening in your life and you share it with a friend and a friend comforts you, that friend's filling your bucket and helping you feel better about yourself in that moment. You're scared and they calm you down, they're filling your bucket. Now, some of us, our bucket doesn't have a solid bottom. It's got holes in it, and the support that we get from other people drain through. That also happens with even compliments or admiration. You do something really good and people go like, way to go, that's awesome. They're filling your bucket and they're validating you. You feel seen. But some of us with this low receptive capacity, and narcissists belong in this group, they have holes in the bottom of their supply bucket, this internal emotional supply bucket. So when they get, hey, way to go, you did a great job, or, oh, I'm so sorry, that sounds really tough, it goes in, but it drains right back out and it empties. And it never lasts. And so they need more and they need more. Have you noticed when you're around this individual how exhausted you feel? Like you can't say enough, you can't do enough, you can't comfort enough, you can't help enough. What you're experiencing when that happens is low receptive capacity. So they then make it like you're not doing enough. You didn't love me enough. You didn't help me enough. You didn't comfort me enough. No, it wasn't about your lack of empathy, your lack of supply. It was that they couldn't hold on to it. It didn't stay with them. What you did just drained right through as if it never happened. I often feel when I'm around somebody, if it feels like they're an insatiable black hole, like they'll take and take and take, you know that you're in a relationship or you've met somebody who has some pretty toxic tendencies, because what you're experiencing is called a low receptive capacity. Their complaint about you not being enough is really a reflection of they can't experience enough. It'd be like, for example, eating and the food drains right through you. And so you got to eat and eat and eat and eat and eat as a result of this. That's what they're saying, well, there's not enough food in the world. No, actually, there's a lot of food in the world. But the problem is that whatever you eat doesn't satisfy you. So when you hear you weren't enough, please hear this is a person who can't experience enough, can't get enough. They're an insatiable, hungry, emotional person. Myth number 4. We often end up thinking there's such a thing as finding happiness, and that when they get into this new relationship, they're finally happy. They found the right person, and that I just wasn't the right person and they didn't have happiness with me. Please know that's not true, because the truth of happiness is that we have to find it in ourselves, with ourselves. You know, life isn't going to make you happy. Even if you as a kid went to the amusement park every single day, it isn't going to eventually will get boring. I mean, have you noticed how everything kind of loses its thrill and it loses its excitement? Well, that's what happens with narcissists. It's called novelty seeking. They're constantly looking for the next rush or the next high or the next adventure. And so, and they look like it's happiness, but what it is, it's really, they're acting out on their discontentment. They're unhappy people who are chronically discontented or bored or empty. And so they move from one shallow event to the next shallow event to the next shallow event, hoping they're going to find this like nirvana or this utopia or something. It's not going to happen. So what you're seeing is that initial happiness is just that rush and that initial excitement before the boredom sets back in. But the boredom will set back in because there's nothing about them that's ever changed. Number 5, we end up thinking that the new person must be better than me. Or here's the other thing that I end up seeing some of us do is because we're so afraid that the new partner might be better than us, we find all the ways in which the new partner is worse than us. And we'll have all these derogatory statements to say about them. They're a loser, they're this or they're that. No, they aren't better and they're not worse than you. They're just the next victim. So I really want you to stay away from the comparison trap, because when you fall into comparison with a narcissist, that's what they want. These are chronically unhappy people who are jealous of other people, and they want you jealous of them because they're jealous of you. So be really, really careful that you don't get into thinking the new person's worse than you or new person's superior than you, because now you're running as the same script as the narcissist, and you don't want to be doing that. You want to see people as people, flawed people doing the best that they can day in and day out. Myth number 6, they must have actually really loved me, or they wouldn't have been trying to hurt me. So I want you to know that Again, this goes back to what I said before. Narcissists don't love anyone but themselves. And even their own love is really not a rich love. It's not a healthy love. It's really more of a fantasized pursuit of the imaginary illusion that they can never get to or find. So don't think about this as being that personal, because honestly, I hate to tell you this, it isn't very personal. They don't think a whole lot about you. Now, they'll stalk you, partly out of their comparison and the competitiveness, but it's not because they're preoccupied with you. They're preoccupied with doing better than you or wanting to monitor how well you're doing. But it's not really like, they don't like worry about, are you sleeping at night, or what do you dream of? Are you dreaming of them? No, no, no. It's not like that kind of depth. It's more shallow, competitive, like you would for your, enemy or somebody that you just sort of see yourself as chasing. So don't personalize it that much, because unfortunately they don't really personalize and don't have a whole lot of depth. Everything about a narcissist is extremely shallow. Number 7, we often get into the thought of they're thriving, but I'm broken. This person is not thriving. They're still going to struggle at the job. They're still going to have those pipe dreams that never come true. They're still going to struggle with initiative. They don't know how to do intimacy. Sex hasn't gotten better with this new person. There's nothing really they're thriving about. It's all this image. It's just fake. So please know that your best revenge is taking your life back and healing, doing your work to healing and focusing on you. Because here's what I want to remember about all of this, and we're going to talk a little bit before I take your questions. The truth is, they haven't changed. They're not really happy. This new person isn't better. They're just another cog in this person's cycle. And you, however, have the real opportunity to actually break free, heal, and find real happiness, something that narcissist is never going to know. Okay, so what do you do if you've been left recently, and you're maybe not recently, and you find yourself still sitting in all of this and it's really hurting and you don't know how to break out of this? You just feel yourself obsessed with what's going on in their life. Maybe they're stalking you so they don't let you forget them. Maybe you find them showing up on your feed, or whatever way that you're kind of knowing that they're around. Maybe they're driving by your house. I've heard of that too, where, or you have to see them because you're exchanging kids. And so there's this awareness that they drive up with a new person parked in the car and they smell of cologne or perfume, and you're aware of they're going somewhere and doing something that seems so exciting. Or they're taking the kids on that next fantasy vacation that you thought that you two would take them to, and now they're doing it. So whatever it is, it's just getting in your craw and you can't really struggling to heal from. I want you to first, step one, identify the core assumption that you're making that's distressing you. Okay? So I just listed a whole bunch of them, and maybe it might be helpful for those of you who are on TikTok or Instagram who won't get a replay of this. It's going to be replayed on Facebook as well as YouTube. So you can go back and check it. But go through that whole list. I just listed 7 of them. They changed. They must really love this new one. They don't love me. I wasn't enough. They're finally happy. The new partner's better than me. Maybe they really love me because they're trying to hurt me, or they're thriving because I'm broken. There's 7 assumptions, but maybe you have your own assumption. But I want you to write down what that specific assumption is that's distressing you. And here's the thing I noticed as a retired psychologist when I was working with people in the office. We get ashamed because we know it's irrational, but yet it still has control over us. So I don't care how crazy your assumption is. I don't care how ludicrous or how ridiculous or how unrealistic it is. It doesn't matter. It's driving you nuts, and that's what matters. So I want you to identify that core assumption that's distressing you, whatever it is. And I just, like I said, listed 7, but be very specific. And I want you then, with curiosity, not judgment. Remember, I always love that saying, we listen and we don't judge. I want you to do that with yourself. I'm going to observe this about myself, and I'm not going to judge. But I want you to be specific. Why is it bothering you? In the sense of, what about it is that you believe? And how does this tie into your past? When else have you gotten this message? What about it hurts so much? Is it that you're afraid you're never going to have love again? Are you afraid you're going to be alone? Are you afraid that that was the best it's ever going to get? Or maybe you're concerned that your kids are never going to have a 2-parent family, or that somehow you've messed your kids up because of this. Maybe you're afraid that you'll never get back on your feet again. Maybe you're afraid that you weren't enough and you're not enough in any relationship. But whatever it is, You want to see it, but don't judge. But really like hone in on it and ask questions in a non-critical, non-shaming way. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, now I want you to examine the evidence. What proof do you have that this assumption is true? What are you basing it on? Are you basing it on emotions or on fears or on social media posts of your friends? Is it based on reality, or is it just like a curated version of what your ex-partner wants you to see? So really like to start to like listen to how this thought got constructed and how it's gotten based. And I want you to question the proof of it. Like one of mine was, because I'm autistic and I've spent a lot of time alone, that I thought I would be lonely and I wouldn't have other future relationships. And somehow this was like my last, I don't know, last hurrah. See, I'm telling you, I'm judging myself. I've just told you, don't judge. I'm judging myself. But let's look at let's do this exercise with it. Do I have more time in my life left? Yeah, absolutely. I can make changes. Who's to say what the future holds? Can I know what the future is going to do tomorrow? Is life changeable? Yes, absolutely it's changeable. So as much as I may think that I know what the future holds, I actually don't, because it can change on a whim. You see what I'm saying? So I want you to do the same with yourself. I want you to sort of like look at the actual proof and challenge by basing it on evidence. Okay, that's step number 2. Step number 3. I want you to reframe the thought. So let's take mine. I'm afraid that I'm going to be alone because I'm unusual and a little bit nerdy, and I'm not going to find other people who love me or like me. I want you to say instead, you know what? I don't know what the future holds, and it always can change, and I will meet my people. See, I just reframed that thought. So here's another example. You may think, oh, my ex is finally happy and in love. It just wasn't with me. I want you instead to say, no, my ex is in an idealization phase, and I already know how this story is going to end. Or you may say, you know what? They moved on because I wasn't enough. They always said there was something wrong with me. I want you to say instead, they moved on quickly because this person is insatiably hungry, needs constant validation, and it had nothing to do with me. Do you see how you reframe the thought? So you take your core assumption, you find the evidence that doesn't back it up, challenge it. Number 3, you reframe the thought into a new direction that actually is based on the truth. Number 4, I want you to compare past behavior with present behavior. For example, write out specifically how they treated you versus how they're acting now. Did they start your relationship with intense love bombing? Did they rush intimacy? Did they post social media pictures of you two when you first found each other? Are they doing it now? Is it lining up in a similar thing that they're doing right now? Did they promise change but actually never followed through? What was the promises they made to you, and what happened to those promises? I want you to remember this. What this does is it shows you, by actually contrasting and comparing, that what they're doing is just the same cycle that's being regurgitated over and over. There's no transformation of this person. This is just another like rinse and repeat situation. And Smash, I'm so glad you're finding this helpful. That's awesome. So then number 5, I want you to challenge the happiness illusion. Remember, narcissists are all about image management, not about remorse, accountability, responsibility, and authenticity. So ask yourself, do happy people flaunt their happiness, or do they just experience life? Like, how many times you are super caught up in something and enjoying the moment, do you think to take your camera out and film it? Chances are you don't. You're so caught up in experiencing with the high and the amazing like connectedness of the moment. We don't actually like record it, because recording it takes us one step out and we're not in the experience anymore. That's what they're doing. They're actually recording life because they're not actually living their life. So how many times have you seen somebody look like a fantastic holiday that they had on Facebook or on Instagram, and you circle back and you talk to them about how did Christmas go, and they'll say, it was the worst ever. The kids got the flu, they spent vomiting, I was cleaning up bed sheets all weekend, it was horrible. And yet you look at the Facebook pictures and they look fabulous. You would have thought they were the happiest people and they had a Norman Rockwell experience. So challenge, how often is social media actually accurate? And then really think critically about this. If this person lied to me, manipulated me, played roles, cheated on me, why would I trust their current performance? Why would I think what I'm seeing now is truthful when they have never told me the truth? Number 6, I want you to stop the comparison game. Remind yourself that your partner, that no partner is better for a narcissist, just newer. I love that. Let me say that again. The new partner is not better, they're just new. They're not different from you. They're not better than you. They're not worse than you. They're just different. And narcissists thrive on novelty, and they jump on new relationships instead of doing the harder work of healing, reflecting, growing, and changing. They haven't changed. They're just mirroring somebody new. So I want you to stop the comparison game and remind yourself who this person really is. Number 7, I want you to focus on your healing by not focusing on them. Instead of wondering what is going on with them, ask yourself, how can I rebuild my life today in a way that's authentic and engaging with self-care and really helping me heal from the inside out? Really focus on your own healing from the inside out. And number 8, this is a hard one, guys. Get ready. I'm going to hold your hand here, virtually. I want you to cut off the triggers that are reminding you of that past relationship. Stop watching their social media accounts. Stop asking your mutual friends, how are they doing? Stop checking up on them. Now, you may not be able to go cold turkey. I get that. So what I'd like you to do is find out how often you do it. Take a baseline. Are you checking every day? Checking 10 times a day? Are you checking every week? Find your baseline and ask yourself to do it a little less the next day or a little less the next week. So say, for example, you check 5 times a day. I want you to today check only 3 times or 2 times. Do it a little bit less. Oh, John, I'm glad you never check. That's awesome. But whatever you're doing that forces that reinforcement trigger, whether it's that hearing from the friends or, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, maybe it is when they pick up the kids, you look outside at the car. I don't know, but whatever it is that's triggering you, stop it and replace it. And then finally, number 9, I want you to remind yourself of the long-term truth, and that is this relationship they're in is just another rinse and repeat cycle. I've escaped, and I'm working to rebuild my life. So say this every time that you guys get stuck and you end up really worried about whatever is going on in this person's life. So let me review those steps again, and then I'm going to start taking your questions. 1, identify your core assumption that's driving you nuts. Number 2, examine the evidence about it. What's the actual proof? 3, reframe the thought into a positive, truthful statement. Number 4, compare their past behavior with their present behavior and see how it's just another cycle. Number 5, challenge the illusion that they're happy because they're not happy. I also want you to stop the comparison game. That's number 6. Number 7, I want you to focus on your healing, not on their illusionary life. Number 8, cut off the reinforcement triggers. And number 9, I want you to remind yourself of the long-term truth that this new relationship they're in is just another cycle that they're in. All right, thank you so much for this. Again, I do this every Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Next week is going to be a tough one. We're going to look at why men as well as women abuse and what the key difference between male abuse or male violence as well as female violence. We're going to really get into the nuts and bolts of domestic abuse, why people are abusive, and how it differs from men versus women. So let's talk about your questions. What kinds of things are coming up to you today? We can talk about anything that's really, anything. It doesn't have to be related to this topic. It could be something else, but let's address what issues you have today. And thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate that. So how are you? I sound like a therapist, don't I? How are you doing today? So how are you guys all doing today? What kind of questions do you guys have for me today? I'm so thrilled, by the way, that you guys hanging out with me on YouTube. Yeah, I know, Research Tube. They don't leave you alone. They often don't leave you. That's true. Lisa's asking, what's the difference between hoovering, stalking, and the reverse hoover? I have not heard of the term reverse hoover. The ex is showing up at public places I'm at, making herself seen by sitting in parking lots and doing a U-turn to follow me. That's interesting. Why do you think, Lisa, that your ex is doing that? Do you think she's afraid you're going to move on or afraid that you've met somebody? Is there, it sounds like your ex-partner is a bit paranoid. It's what hits me. but I was kind of curious. Yeah, and anybody who's heard of we always make new terms up, and I don't always keep up on the new terms. So if anyone can just define for me what a reverse Hoover is, I'd really appreciate that. But stalking to me is somebody who just sort of like, well, what you just described, Lisa, is stalking. That's the form. That's a physical stalking that's happening to you. It can also happen online. My ex stalked me at my website for over a year. I mean, he had like more than 300 visits to my website in a year. Like that's a lot. He's rereading the same articles all over and over. Yeah, Lisa, you're describing stalking behavior. Do you think the stalking behavior doesn't sound like hoovering though? Hoovering would be like kind of showing up and love bombing you again, promising to be different, promise that they've changed, trying to make amends with you. That's what I would say hoovering is. And no, it doesn't sound like your partner's hoovering. It sounds like they outright stalking you. I say, so Robin or RBH says, I think being called mentally ill really affected me. It like created a deep insecurity. So I'm taking the RBH that your partner called you mentally ill and that now you've taken it as sort of like shaken you apart. Like maybe there's something wrong with me. That's what I'm kind of hearing you say. That's common. I want to say this cautiously because you can't universally apply this, but a lot of toxic people accuse those who do this to them with the things that they're actually doing. I suspect that your partner who called you mentally ill is not mentally stable, and they've really actually identified what they do and then calling you on it as if they do it. That's my suspicion. What if, I know you said it's really shaking you up, so it sounds like it hit a deep-seated insecurity for you that now you're sort of playing it out and worrying about it, which is what they want. They actually want you to be dysregulated and out of control because that makes them feel better. Remember, these people are not very healthy people. And so they thrive off your struggle. So be very aware that plays into it. So what can you do? Well, challenge yourself. Are you having areas where you're a little unstable? And what have you done to sort of address that? Can you see a therapist maybe to actually help reassure you that you don't have a mental illness, that that's actually not true? And look at the stability of your life. Compare that to the stability of their life. I have a feeling that your life is a lot more stable than they are, that they actually have a pattern of a lot of disruption and chaos. So those are types of things can help ground you back into the truth. Mark Lee said, I've had several narcissistic relationships. You're loosely accurate. Actually, you're very accurate, but it's different for female narcissists because they have different styles. I agree, Mark. That's why I hope you join me next week because we're going to talk about how female abusers show up in a different way than male abusers. Yes, I probably was kind of doing more of a typical, stereotypical caricature of a narcissist. And whereas females tend to use more of their sexuality, their attractiveness, their physicality, they also tend to be more passive aggressive. They use guilt. Guilt's a huge weapon to a narcissistic woman. It's interesting. We don't tend to notice narcissistic women, and I find that intriguing, why we don't spot them except for when men talk about the abuse they're experiencing or children talk about a narcissistic mom. I find that very intriguing that we just don't spot narcissism, but think of the mean girl trope. That's actually a narcissistic dynamic that we're describing here, is that sort of a queen bee kind of way, but also it is the martyr. They often hide as the sort of the do-gooder and saving the world, and they are the biggest sufferer. So that's another way that you'll see it. And yet when you go look at their family, you'll see that their family is really extremely suffering. So I do agree that we often don't talk about the feminist narcissist, or I'm sorry, the feminine narcissist. I plan to have an upcoming show about female friendships and how narcissism shows up in that. And like I said, next week we'll be talking about the key differences between a physical, like domestic violence, between a male abuser and a female abuser. Because I'm one of these people who, do I think that there's a patriarchy and that there's natural male entitlement and privilege? Absolutely. I'm not going to deny that. But I also know, because I've seen plenty of it, where there are women who are not acting out of the patriarchy. They're just not healthy women. They're just cruel women who are very abusive. My grandmother was one of them. She abused men. She abused women. She abused everybody. I mean, she was sort of non-discriminatory in her abuse. So I'm very familiar with the female toxic individual. They do exist. It is not always because of the patriarchy or because of oppression. There's just some women who are evil and cruel. Absolutely. So I hope you join me next week to talk more about that. Nikki asked, this is a great question, Nikki, on Instagram. Are narcissists doing the best that they can? I guess I want to push back. Can't that be said about all of us, that we're doing the best that we can? And what does that, by you thinking that, what does it change? Because here's what I get worried about when we make those type of statements, that we're excusing negative or abusive behavior. Aren't you doing the best that you can? But does that mean that your boss should expect less from you? Say that you arrive late 5 times this week because you have a pet home sick. Maybe that's the best that you can, but does that still give your boss a right to be upset with you and consider firing you for that? Absolutely. Why should we give narcissists a get out of card free because they have deficits or limitations that are deliberately hurtful and harmful to other people? I don't think they should get any kind of leeway just because they're doing the best that they can. We're all doing the best that we can. Yeah, thanks for research too, for providing more examples of stalking behavior like hacking emails, smear campaigns, destroying finances, showing up at work, claiming you're the problem, calling in on you. I mean, yeah, it's amazing how many of us are suffered because of these type of toxic behaviors. And it's and here's the other opposite though. Just because your partner is not doing that, maybe it's easy for you to say, well, then maybe they didn't really love me that much. I know we do really weird things with our thoughts. I'll give you, mine was one of those individuals. He stalked me online, but he would block me and have no contact with me and act like I'm a person non grata, that I don't exist. There are toxic people who will freeze you out, and they freeze you out on purpose, a way to hurt you, to make you feel like you're a nobody and insignificant. So whether or not they're doing all this malicious mayhem in your life or doing absolutely nothing, they'll do whatever they think it takes to hurt you. That's the goal. The goal is to hurt you. So urban orgasm, let me try that again. Urban organism. There you go. I love, maybe that's a better version. Urban organism. What's my thought on the intentionality of their actions? I think it is intentional. I think it's not everything's intentional. I think some of their behavior is just instinctual or predatory. You know, they have sort of a more base operation of what they do that's protective. So I don't think it's all planned out and schemed, but I do think that there's a level of awareness and knowing there's good behavior and bad behavior. They don't care. They're going to choose whatever gratifies them. So if you would define that as intentional, then it's intentional. Here's another way to address this question in an opposite direction. Do they pull their behavior back together when they know there's severe consequences to it? Like, would they do this in front of a legal officer, a police officer? Would they do this at work when they're going to jeopardize their job? No, absolutely not. So is it under their control? Well, enough that they don't do it so they don't have bigger consequences. Absolutely. If you saw this week's podcast episode with Chuck Gary, he's the one that, for the Gender Violence Institute, put that big list together. He's working with men and asked them what benefits they get out of abuse. And he had this massive list, this horrifying list. And if you're interested in seeing the list, I put it in the YouTube video for the podcast, as well as on all the audio, wherever you get your favorite audio podcast. I put it in the show notes. But the interesting thing is, what stopped them? Well, it was consequences. They didn't want to get in trouble. So if they know that they're going to get in trouble, then that suggests a level of intentionality in their behavior. Absolutely. Yeah. So any last questions? Because we're going to wrap it up today. I really appreciated hanging out with you today. But anything else that you want to ask me for? I'll take one more question that comes across. I'm looking at the various feeds. Yeah, morality spiral, they do live with impunity. And partly they do that. And that's why I struggle with this, is that because we get exhausted. They wear everybody out. They wear the justice system out. They wear their attorneys out. Their lawyers sometimes fire them. Their audacity is so bold that they get away with it. We just kind of can't quite believe that they would do something like that, and they end up getting away. And because there's not like firmer, better, consistent consequences, then they don't learn, unfortunately, because they have a very base level form of morality. I appreciate that you really like the Joe Navarro interview. So if you guys are curious about what that discussion is, I interviewed Joe Navarro, who's FBI profiler, a few weeks ago, and it was a fascinating interview. He has a fabulous book out there called Dangerous Personalities. So if you're looking for help on typing your partner, now he is not a psychologist, but he just took all the worst behaviors that he saw based on real life, and he listed them, and he has an assessment that you can find in his book on the paranoid type, the antisocial personality type, the narcissist, as well as the unstable or the borderline type. And so you can end up finding out what type of partner you're in a relationship with. They do. They wear everybody out. Exactly. And they get away with stuff because of their boldness, because we're kind of like astonished that they would actually do this. Like, really? You think? And then because of it, we're stymied and we don't know what to do or say, and we just let them get away with it. It's ridiculous. I think if we got better at anticipating possible pressure like that, and we held firm, and we didn't get thrown off, and we didn't make allowances, that we could help curb this behavior just with better consequences. Yeah, they are very good. I agree. Morality spiral, she wrote or he wrote, they're very careful to make sure that they themselves smell like roses, just in case if there's allegation. Partly the way they do that is they already have a new narrative going to explain what they're doing and why they do it. And because they are in control and they're not dysregulated by being attacked or thrown off, they look collected and together. So we tend to believe them. Whereas usually the victim is so overwhelmed by the emotions of what just happened, they often look less reliable, unfortunately, when they're interviewed, which is really sad. It's super sad. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you join me next week for talking about the key differences of abuse, domestic violence between men and women. We're going to look at both. The interview that's coming up on the pod right now, this week on the podcast, is with Chuck Derry. So if you're interested in hearing the benefits that male abusers get out of their relationship, I want to warn you, it's painful, but it's very honest, and it's fascinating. So be sure to check out the podcast, Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. And if you're looking for support, please always know the Toxic Free Relationship Club. We have the community level as well as the club level, which the club level has live group coaching. So I'd love to have you get the support that you need and deserve. All right, you guys, you are amazing. You know how much I love and really love hanging out with you. So I'll see you next Tuesday here again. Thank you so much.